I want to start off by thanking the High Commissioner and Minister Prabhu for making sure that we have with us a high caliber business delegation from India. Also that there was and I'll speak about it a little bit later, a CEO's forum meeting that took place yesterday, and we engaged with the CEOs yesterday afternoon, Minister Prabhu and myself, and that's been a very productive meeting. Of course, as previous speakers have indicated, this business summit is taking place against the background of commemorating our two icons, Nelson Mandela and Mahatma Gandhi, respectively. I think that last night, and in the indications that would be made here by previous speakers, which I'm not going to repeat, both of those have ended up as being global icons, champions of the values that we should be aspiring to, but also that there's a lot of historical intersections between the role that they played in their own country, and also in the case of Mahatma Gandhi, the fact that he was also a political activist here in South Africa. A point I made yesterday, which I think is well worth repeating in the context of a business summit like this, is that during our own struggle for liberation in South Africa, India was at the forefront of providing solidarity. And that included the fact that India was the first country to call for sanctions against apartheid and was a consistent implementer of sanctions against apartheid. And so what this meant was that as of the early 1990s, economic relations between South Africa and India were practically non-existent. There was practically no trade, and there was practically no investment relations. And I think it's important that we understand that, because in actual fact, over the years, since our democracy in South Africa, we've developed a strong partnership with India, represented in our common membership of a number of organizations, BRICS, IBSA, the Indian Ocean Rim, a number of groupings that we participate in together in the WTO, I'm sure in the IMF as well, in the G20, in the non-aligned movement. We are all fellow participants in those international groupings. And of course, this is not the first time that we have been talking about developing bilateral economic relations. And I think it is important that we do recognize that we have over the years made some progress in our bilateral relations. India has come from nowhere in the 1990s to become between our sixth and our eighth largest trade partner, taking exports and imports together. So India is a significant trading partner for South Africa now. And indeed, our bilateral trade has been growing. So if we take the period from 2012 until 2017, this saw an increase in our bilateral trade from about 68 billion South African rands to 107 billion South African rands. It has been growing. We've also seen, I think, a growing and significant investment relationship between our two countries. We record that there are approximately 130 Indian firms that are operating in South Africa in one way and another, and a number of Indian brands are well known and well established in South Africa, including Tata, Mahindra, and Cipla, among others. So I think that we have something to build on. Just to put the other side of the story, I think it's also important that it's not just India investing in South Africa, it's also South African companies investing in India. Between 2003 and 2018, 28 South African foreign direct investment projects have been recorded in India, with a total investment value of about 10 billion South African rand, and they've created over 5,000 jobs in India. So we do have a relationship that has been growing and does need and does provide us with a base. But I think that what we have concluded in our interactions to date, and what is the underlying motive for this business summit, is that we need to take that relationship a lot further forward, that we can do it and that we need to do it. We can do it because, as has already been mentioned, India is one of the fast-growing economies in the world. It's a fast-growing economy also due to the policies associated with Prime Minister Modi, which have propelled India when many countries in the world were faltering and stuttering. India continued to be a fast-growing economy, and that's one part of it. And then on the other side of it is that South Africa, as has already been mentioned, is also on a new economic path. A new economic path which our President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, has called a new dawn. Now, this new dawn is based on, underpinned by improving investor and consumer confidence. And this growing investor and consumer confidence is based on the fact that we have acted to deal with some of the challenges that have held us back in the past. So we have seen already a new broom sweeping the issues of governance and better performance of a number of our state-owned companies. We have seen action to reduce areas where we've had uncertainty in terms of policy and practice. And all of this, I think, is leading to a view that South Africa is on an upward trajectory, that the growth forecasts that we have at the moment are not the ceiling, but they are the floor that we can add to as we improve on all of these areas of economic performance. And indeed, it's worth saying that Goldman Sachs earlier this year has picked South Africa as the quote-unquote hot emerging market for this year of 2018. So I think that the circumstances in both our countries are propitious for us to deepen and strengthen our bilateral relations. And there's probably also another factor, and that is that later on this afternoon, I will have to leave this event because I need to engage in a teleconference to discover whether or not South Africa will be subject to punitive tariffs on steel and aluminium products to the biggest economy in the world. Now, that is coming against also last month. Minister Prabhu organized the first important political conversation to discuss where is the multilateral trading system going. And I think that this is indicating that there are shockwaves in the multilateral trading system, that our relations with our established trading partners are not necessarily what they were in the past, but also that the issue that Minister Gordon raised is a critical one. How do we work together to ensure that we have a more developmental, a more inclusive growth, and that trade is the servant of those two concepts, development and inclusive growth, and not something that trumps, to use a coin of phrase, that trumps those particularly important concepts. And I want to salute Minister Prabhu because he's risen to the challenge. We are very much, I think, on the same page on most of the issues that are confronting us in the World Trade Organization. We have very similar views on many issues, and Minister Prabhu has risen to the occasion by trying to take the lead in promoting that political conversation. But I think that also the more important point for the bilateral relationship is that we've actually got to find each other in the developing world, in the emerging markets, and strengthen the relations beyond that. Now, as I said earlier, I'm very pleased to say that we had a very good engagement yesterday with the CEOs Forum. And what we decided was that the CEOs Forum had begun to drill down to areas of sectoral cooperation that we could build on. And that led to a conclusion on our part that what we must do as government ministers is to ensure that we don't just let this slip until the next big event, but that we have identified a number of opportunities along the way where we can, as ministers, take stock of what's happening. We have urged our business people to follow through with regular engagements to make the areas that we've been talking about, that they've been talking about, and some other areas that we added, to make those things happen and become real business opportunities. Also, a little bit later, we will witness the signature of the agreement between Invest India and Invest South Africa, and that will enable, I think, those two agencies to also drill down to identify projects as well as sectors where we can cooperate and where we can move the relationship further forward. I would want to say as well that I'm very pleased that we have a number of colleagues from SACU, SADC with us here today, because South Africa has always taken the view that our destiny is inextricably linked with that of the rest of our partners in the continent and our immediate region. And I think that it's quite significant that right after Minister Prabhu's meeting at the WTO, we had the adoption by the heads of state of the African Union and the opening for signature of the agreements to put in place the African Continental Free Trade Area. That is an indication that this continent is on a journey towards establishing a large domestic market that will allow economic diversification, will allow and support broad-based industrialization across our continent. And I think that we would be very happy. I see later in the program that you will be having meetings with our colleagues who are here from other countries. And we sincerely hope that this bilateral engagement between South Africa and India can also result in a strengthening of bilateral relations between India and the other countries that are here present. So I think that what we want to say as South Africa is, Minister Gordon alluded to it, one of our key objectives as the government, as enunciated by our President, President Ramaphosa, is that we are seeking a major investment drive, that the President has said that over the next 3 years, we need to raise our investment by $100 billion US dollars. That is a stretch target, but it's something that can be achieved. If that is achieved, I think you will find South Africa in a much stronger place to be a partner with the region, with the continent, but also with countries like India. So I sincerely hope and trust that this will be a productive day for the business people who are here present, and that we certainly look forward to receiving a report of whatever transpires today. But I can also indicate that we are determined, both of us, Minister Prabhu and myself, to make sure that what was agreed in the business forum is actually implemented to the mutual benefit of all of us. Thank you very much.